Hello, good evening, good night, good morning. Welcome back to the show.
Hello.
Yeah, is Gonky going to freeze today? That's always the question. Casmo returns, joining us live from his command center.
Hello. Thank you.
One night before his big reveal.
Yeah.
New show tomorrow. We'll talk about that later. However, thank you for joining us. And those of you joining us on the Spotify, thank you as well when this goes live on that. So we've got a big show today. Anything to say before we get started, El Gonko?
A little bit better computer today, so hopefully no hangups. That's my goal.
Yeah.
No hangups.
Okay. Hey, we already have a couple things from the audience. Thank you, Jordan. 20 Canadian. And Plexi says, suck it,
thanks.
free diver. Thanks you guys for participating in my inside joke. That must be something off your channel, Gonky, because I don't know that.
That's awesome.
All right. Take his money back.
Our first no takes backsies. Our first topic, cockpit topic. Douglas. Behold. Uh-oh.
It's not
Douglas
me.
Is muted. He's muted and things are happening. There he is.
How about now?
Yes.
Yeah.
So
Accept the cookies and let's talk.
Come on, Douglas.
There's a long article on aerosociety.com. Probably should put the link in the description about BAE systems. What's that, Mover?
I was going to say, I saw it from our friend Tim on the Twitter. Tim's probably in the chat. I saw it. I'm like, man, that's a good article. Let's talk about it. But Douglas will tell us so that we're not copyright infringing. Go on.
There's a bunch of lead-in about the information load on pilots, and that goes all the way back to the Century series when they started inventing HUDs to deal with it. Their concern is that with some of the modern stuff, like the loyal wingmen and AIs flying alongside live pilots, that there's going to be an increase in information overload. They work through some issues in the middle here about the gender of AI and whether that will be an issue, which, wow. And then they go on to get into, I think, what's the meat of the article here, where they talk about haptic vests and eye tracking, which are both pretty well-developed technologies at this point, with the idea that haptic vests might be used for SA in relation to things like the Loyal Wingman drones, and eye tracking, where you'd have a button on your HOTAS and just kick it over to, now it's tracking your eyes to select information. What do you think, gentlemen?
Doc, you had a lot to say about this when we were talking about it, so I'll let you have the floor.
Well, it's funny reading through that article. I was like, oh, they want to bring Wizzos back, right? Because it was talking about having and Mover will make fun of this, but like intelligent, some intelligence assisting and filtering what is the most pertinent and useful information to the pilot in any given scenario, which I think I'm the only one here with two-seat experience. And like, if you have a good Wizzo, that's actually kind of what happens. Casmo, sorry.
Casmo has a whole bunch. And Casmo, you have, I mean, eye tracking. I mean, kind of the eye.
I guess, yeah.
I mean, I wouldn't call it eye tracking, but no, it's different. I think what they're saying, right, is like you like look at something and it flicks a switch for you or whatever, which seems really weird.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know. I just can't fathom that. Like, I just happen to look at it and flick. Oh, I didn't mean to put down the landing gear. So I don't know.
Well, Casmo, I mean, was that the case? Like, if you flew with another, it's two pilots, right? The way you guys did it, it wasn't like. I mean,
yeah, but I mean, you're both. You know, one guy's doing one thing and one guy's flying. But yeah, I mean, I like having another guy in the cockpit, honestly, especially if you're doing like stuff down low. It's, you know, you can manage things better. But I guess what they're saying is AI, then like filtering. I don't like the idea of anyone filtering my stuff. Like, I'll decide whether it's pertinent to me or not. I don't know.
Yeah, but I mean, I understand what they're trying to do. I just, you know, like the Typhoon was designed, I think, with voice activated like commands, and they couldn't get it to work. So I'm not saying the technology or the idea is bad, but I think we're a ways off from it, because if we haven't been able to perfect the voice activated stuff, I mean, the eye stuff, I think, is even, it would be even tougher.
I can see this in, especially with the AI integration. You know, you're talking loyal wingman, and like, because it's a whole thing, right? They're not just talking about eye tracking and haptic feedback, but think of it in a, you know, multi-plane engagement beyond visual range. Now you're trying to sort, shoot, track who's hostile, who's friendly. Like, I think you have a good opportunity to help you with battlefield situational awareness and knowing kind of where everything is at any given moment. And I think that's where it helps.
That's where a really good Wizzo and like a AESA fully loaded F model Super Hornet. I mean, I would do exercises, you know, out in Key West, and I mean, man, flowing cold, you'd have the whole thing suitcase, because, you know, I'm just flying, doing formation. I'm kind of watching what he's doing on the radar and the sorting, and I mean, it does help. I mean, he's like my he's my AI helper back there, you know, filtering the info. Then we round the corner and you know, I shoot, or he tells me to shoot, right? If I'm not quick enough.
It's not artificial. It's just actual intelligence. It's a human. It's HI. It's human intelligence back there.
Actual intelligence, yeah.
But in the case of the AI, you get the extra gas too. So,
but you lose the flare, Mover.
Again, to all the Wizzos watching, that was Gonky's line. It was not me. Although I did say it, so I own it.
I enjoyed flying with Wizzos. I just want to put that out there.
Yeah, sure you did, buddy. Sure you did. Okay, awesome. Any reattacks on that? It's a great article. Go check it out. Yeah. I just thought it was interesting to talk about because of the eye tracking and all that stuff. And boy, technology.
Well, dude,
I like to see it work.
Information overload's a real thing, and like very quickly, even in the F with two people in it, and the latest and greatest, like all it takes is like one little domino, and it just, you're off the tracks.
Yeah, and I wonder the grade modes, right? So, you know, we always, you know, every system has a failure. So what happens when it is, you know, it gets a smudge and it doesn't, it thinks you're looking at something and you have to override it because it, you know, your walleye, because you're looking one way and it's thinking you're looking the other, and it's flipping switches for you that you didn't necessarily ask it to. To me, that would be a thing, but I'm sure they have ways around that. I mean, there are engineers that are much smarter than all three of us.
What are you doing, Mover? Huh?
Yeah. Yeah. You're looking down, you got the pedal pack, and they're like,
that's when we have problems.
Yeah. Right. Exactly. What
well, you know, doing? The F-35B will auto eject you.
That's horrible.
Casmo, you didn't know that?
No, that's
so no. This is no kidding. T-Bear told me about this when he went and did the sim when it first came out, and it stuck with me the whole time. So the F-35B VTOL, vertical takeoff or landing. You know, it can hover around and do its thing. Well, if it gets itself in a situation where it realizes this is unrecoverable, it'll throw the pilot out. You know, it's like, see you later, you're out, because it anticipates the fact that, you know, this is your survival. So, you know, the question has always been, how do it know? And what happens when it's wrong?
It's a super reliable system, you know.
It yeets you out of the jet. Yeah.
Right.
But no, seriously,
a system that's supposed to only work in a certain environment and then suddenly just does something on its own. Because like I can see that, I get that with the B model, because you're in that environment. But yeah, as long as it's not defaulting to like you're at 20,000 feet and something goes wrong, it's like, oh, you need to get out of here. Like, yeah, having some.
No, it's just in that. Yeah,
sure.
Yeah, it's just sense. When the gear down and it's doing the thing. Not like Jester. What did Doug? Did you just do that? Are you moving us on?
I did not do that.
AI. Happening. It's happening.
Okay. All right. Sorry. We're moving on from the future cockpits to Gonky. Once again, we're going to yield to you.
Yeah.
Do you want to introduce this before I show this and hopefully not get demonetized?
It's a civilian aviation mishap that happened in Malaysia, just outside of the capital there, KL, Kuala Lumpur. And it's a little unique because civil aviation it's not like it in the States where there's, you know, business jets and private planes flying everywhere. So, you know, to see a business jet in Malaysia was pretty rare. I think I actually only saw one that wasn't military. And this one here ended up, it's a Premier, right? Premier 1 ended up crashing. There was 8 people on board, and it killed somebody on a scooter and in a car. So it's quite tragic. There's quite a bit of footage of it, but Mover, that's over to you if you want to show it and then stop it, because it's kind of, you know, it's pretty violent, to be honest. It's very sad. They made no distress calls or anything, so it's kind of a mystery on what happened.
All right, here we go. I'm going to do my best. Let's make it so. Oh, wait. All right, so this was what you sent me. Operated by Jet Valet.
Yeah.
251. He banks up. So they're landing.
Yep.
Just like a final turn thing.
Oh,
dude, I don't know.
We're going to stop it there for reasons.
Yeah.
And that's the aftermath. 10 people killed.
Yeah.
Assemblyman.
Yeah, I reached out to my friends, you know, that I still keep in touch with, some of them anyways. And I guess one of the guys was an ex-RMAF helicopter pilot. So, I mean, sad 10 people lost their lives in a pretty violent crash. You know, Mover, it's kind of funny. Last week we did we covered the MiG-23 crash in Michigan. And I actually had quite a few people comment about, you know, they shouldn't allow these planes flying because, you know, they'll come down and hurt people and whatever. And I just responded with basically, hey, you know, those air shows inspired me to become a pilot, yada yada yada. And hey, airplanes are dangerous. And it's just a good example. It's a non-military airplane. Something happened, it crashed, and it actually did kill 2 people on the ground. So I mean, you know, anytime, if you live around an airport, you have to accept the fact that.
Yeah, I mean, they're just on the highway, you know, it's just happening. I mean, it's still very, very sad.
Yeah. So not only airplanes, right? But I mean, things fall off airplanes too. So very tragic that 2 people ended up, you know, getting killed on the road, but it is what it is.
Casmo, you got anything on that one?
Yeah, no, I mean, it's rough. And like the other video that I know you don't want to show, but gosh, like that's rough. I saw somebody in the chat say, you know, maybe a flight control issue, but yeah, I mean, either that or just, I don't know, loss of situational awareness for a second, because I guess they were cleared to land, so it looks like they were turning, I guess, base the final there, but maybe just got a little bit out of control, or maybe, you know, we don't know what the wind conditions were, you know, maybe something just caused it to roll. I was on short final the other day, like 100 feet, and all of a sudden the wings just rolled on me, you know, it just out of control. Like, and at first I thought it was a flight control issue, but I think it was just like a gust had hit us from a really weird angle that we weren't expecting. So, you know, maybe something like that, and it just upended them. And then at that point, you're that low. What are you going to do?
Yeah. So that's a great segue, because the next thing we're going to talk about is actual no kidding breaking news. There was an Alaska 737 operating in the storm that had a wing strike at the they call it the Santa Ana. Is that what they call it? SNA?
I think
John Wayne County.
I think the gear partially collapsed.
Yeah. So let's watch the video from the cockpit. This is from the Twitter, and then we'll get to the thing.
But why is he turning?
Somebody's alarm's going off.
Yeah.
Oh.
What the fuck? There's sparks. There's sparks outside. What the fuck?
That's got to be a gear just collapsed.
Yeah. There's sparks outside.
I like the guy saying breathe, breathe, breathe. That's smart. Breathing is important.
He's not wrong.
No.
Never wrong. But, they stopped. Let me see if I can pull up. This is what it looked like there.
Yep.
So it's flight 1288 from Seattle. I had to stop on the taxiway, attended by firefighters to escort the passengers safely to the terminal. No injuries have been reported. Boy.
That engine's on the ground, right?
Yeah. Yeah, 100% that gear is collapsed.
Wow.
I think probably it's on touchdown.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, having, collapsed the gear on landing, it's a crappy feeling.
Have you ever flown into there, either of you?
No.
Yeah, there you go.
Oh,
I don't know about.
So I have, and I'm. It's been so long, so I'm going to preface this with it's been 3 years since I've operated a 737, so my memory could be shoddy. However, I do remember this airport, John Wayne, being a special qual because it's a flaps 40, like it's a short runway. There's not a whole lot of slop on it. It's like LaGuardia, right? We did it on our check rides because short runway, flaps 40, which is all the flaps. It's basically a short field landing in a 737. And they were in some very strong weather conditions because of the tropical storm, depression, subtropical, whatever they're calling Hillary now. And so there's just a lot of factors that will probably be looked at. The 737's tough to get in on a good day. I can't imagine in the weather like this, whether, some kind of weather event, microburst wind shear, or just a hard landing, because of the conditions. I don't know. I mean, we'll see what happens.
Totally guessing based off what you just said, right? If you have to do a flaps 40, it's a short runway. But if the weather's that bad, you've probably dialed up the speed because with the flaps 40, you're going to come in fairly slow, but you're dialing up the speed. But it means like, hey, you got to get this thing down. We got to plop it down. So maybe that contributed, like there was some sort of failure with the gear and then they hit, kind of hard because sometimes that's what you got to do, like a carrier landing. And then, maybe that just popped it loose. So, yeah, I've had to land like that a few times too at different small airports where you're just like, I'm planting this bad boy and we're putting it down. So maybe there was some sort of material failure, not just exacerbated it, I'm guessing.
There are some airports in the system that are always tough, firm landings for that very reason. LaGuardia being one of them, because you don't want to end up, off in the water. And here, because I think there's a highway, right? Didn't Southwest, didn't that happen a while back?
Midway, I think, right?
Like
Southwest.
Midway.
Is that Midway?
Is no jet landing. Yeah.
But this one here too, there's stuff at the end where you just you go off and there's nothing to stop you. I mean, it's bad news.
Yeah, you're in the highway. That Southwest one on Midway. Yeah, it went crashed right through like the wall and hit a car, and I think it killed somebody.
Yeah, it did.
So I will say my landing story. So those are known. I was going into West Palm one time in a brand new 737. And I had a great landing in Fort Worth, and the captain's like, "Hey man, you want to take this leg too? You 2 for 2 today?" And I'm like, "Oh yeah, this is gonna be awesome." And I just slammed the thing in, just the bottom fell out, and this lady's, trundling up the aisle, and she's like, "Oh my God, I thought we were in LaGuardia." So obviously she knew. So anyway, that's
well, my instructor on my last flight in OE, I think it was my last flight before he let me go off into the world, he categorized my landing as a carrier landing, because I was like, I don't even think I flared. I think it was just like just slam it down.
I'll
they
tell
can
you,
take a
man.
beating.
Nothing wrong with carrier landings. Come on.
Well, when you're not on a carrier,
you're not meant to. Yeah, exactly. Only on carriers.
It's
but my point is they can take a beating though.
But it's a tough airplane to land well. Like
right.
It takes a lot of finesse. I've heard that an Airbus will make an average pilot or a good pilot average and a bad pilot average, and the 737 is the exact opposite. Heroes and zeros sometimes with landing that thing. But anyway, continuing on our trek of 737 stuff, because boy, there's been a lot of stuff lately. This one was Southwest Airlines that was headed to Cancun, I think. And the headline is, "It catches fire after takeoff," which we'll talk about here in a second. So we've got a resident 737 expert, and let us play.
That's just extra thrust.
He's just stroking the blower,
like the
man.
Yeah. Just tap it, tappy tap, 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 tap.
Yeah, he's trying to meet a climb restriction.
Yeah, exactly. Can you be there in 2 minutes or less? Roger
yes.
that.
Roger. Fuel override, go. Anyway, so this is the article. There's no article, but the story behind it is they had this malfunction. They came back, landed uneventfully, put everybody on a new plane, and then continued on to that. That, when the flames are coming out the back, indicates to me a compressor stall.
Yeah, that's what I thought. And the way it was like kind of just bursting out. Yeah. 100%.
Pop, bang, buzz. Typically when it's on fire, the fire is contained, not shooting out the back unless there's an afterburner of some sort doing those things. But I was funny. They are interviewed. I was watching this on the local news. I couldn't find it. That they interviewed the guy who took the video, and he's like, "Well, there was a strong smell of gasoline in the cockpit." And I'm sitting here going, "That's probably bad." Like,
yeah,
don't do that here.
Any gasoline anywhere on this airplane, actually.
Yeah, there's nothing that runs on that. But if you mean jet fuel, then yeah, I can see that being a thing. Casmo, what is your expert opinion, sir?
Yeah, that's my thought, was like a compressor stall of some sort, and then like maybe there's some sort of leak somewhere, like just exacerbating the problem. I don't know, but I know that 100% the people that were on that flight that landed did not want to get on another airplane after that. So I'm surprised a few just weren't like, smoking a cigarette out back, like, I'll take one tomorrow, I'm good. But
even as the pilot, I mean, in an airliner, an EP is a big deal. Like, there's so much. I mean, single seat fighter, yeah, but in an airliner, and we trained for it. Now, there's a lot that goes into, recurrent training, your initial training, all that stuff. But there's so much more to, running the quick reaction checklist, then getting into the big checklist, and then coordinating with everybody. And there's a lot, and it's not an easy plane to fly single engine. It's not like, oh, well, I mean, once you get it trimmed out, it's good, but it's not like an F-18 where you're just like, okay, copy, I just have to make sure I don't get on the backside of the power curve here. But I think the pilots kept on too. I don't think they called it a day, which I probably would have been like, hey, it's been a good day. It's just,
you just want to be pay protected, dude.
Yeah.
You just want to be pay protected.
Am I still getting paid for this?
Yeah.
Maybe we're heading home to base. So
yeah, I'm not putting you on the spot for emergency procedures, but I cannot remember. Is a compressor stall a leave it at idle if it recovers at idle? I'm getting all my jets mixed up here, because some jets, you got a compressor stall, it's not some engine damage or whatever. You just leave it at idle, because then you get all your backup systems. But some you're not shut down.
I don't believe you're supposed to shut it down. You just reduce it, and then try to get it back. I mean, that's any aircraft I've ever flown. That's the compressor stall. You don't shut it down. You just throttle it back and try to get it under control.
Well, unless you suspect some kind of like internal damage that may cause something else,
Yeah, and then that's kind of like a different checklist, right? That's like a
Yeah.
different procedure, but just a compressor stall, which I don't know. Was there associated banging, right? That's always the thing. So
Did they get a bird? Yeah, I don't know. Gonky, what were you going to say?
right.
I mean, most modern jets use a FADEC, which, like, if it detects excuse me, like an engine stall or whatever, it like the engine will start doing things itself to clear itself, depending on, you know, if you're on the ground or in the air or whatever. I don't know anything about the 7.3 FADEC, but I would imagine that the FADEC would probably try to clear that, wouldn't it?
I mean, initially you're on auto throttle, so you know the thing's doing its own thing and trying to keep up with the
Right.
power demand. So I think it takes a minute. Like you have to recover it to idle to get it to actually, you know, do its thing. So I don't know. I'm sure somebody who's flying them right now will correct me because
You guys aren't real pilots. You guys aren't
I
real.
never claimed to be. Nope, never claimed to be. All right, Douglas, do we have anything from the audience, sir?
We've got quite a bit. $5 each to Gonky for the internet fund, Mover for the racing, Casmo for being awesome, and Wombat for not being Wombat. And, you know, for me, nothing.
Thanks, man.
Well, you're
It's covered all the bases.
yeah. All right. Thank you, Maxim.
That's funny.
Another $10 Canadian for Gonky's technology syllabus.
Thanks, man. I'm working on it.
Thank you. Yeah, we appreciate that. JB
JB
Smoke, thank
Wow.
you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Gonky's
Oh,
DCS setup fund. Now there's something I can get behind. Keep up the good work.
yeah.
Thanks, man.
Hell
That's
yeah.
You
awesome.
need more than $5
They had a
for
home-
DCS setup.
Yeah,
$5 to
that's
buy me
gonna
a gallon of gas. I can get to my jet from there.
Question for Casmo from Tom P. How long do you think the 64 will be flying before being phased out by the new proposed airframes?
forever.
Yeah, long enough. I think like till like 2050 is like the target. I don't know. I don't keep up with it because I don't fly it anymore. But it's a while. It takes a while for new stuff to phase out the old stuff. And I mean, they're still upgrading 64s and doing things. So I think it's gonna be around for quite a while.
What is the new proposed air? Is that the thing with the spinny thing on the back? Is that what's going to replace it?
well,
What
they
is the
haven't-
replacement?
I don't think they haven't decided that one yet. They decided the future vertical lift, so like the Black Hawk replacement, but they haven't done the thing on that one yet.
So there's
Hasn't it-
nothing to replace it yet.
Was there any talk
Right.
of? Was there any talk of bringing back the? Was it the Comanche? What was that thing they like that stealth helo? That thing was,
RH-66.
I think it was
That changed
awesome. And then they just
Yeah.
shelved it.
Well, yeah. I talked to a guy, one of the test pilots. I was trying to get him on to my show, but like he had issues with getting NDAs and stuff. But just a little bit I talked to him about the Comanche, like it was wild. Like it did some really cool stuff.
Yeah.
But I think the official party line is it went over budget. It was just like they were just pouring money into it. And I think probably, I mean, well, this was all before kind of the global war on terror started, which it would not have been good for that fight. So it's probably maybe in a way good that they did cancel it. Are they going to bring it back? I don't know. I haven't heard anything. I don't think so. But I mean, obviously all that technology and all the stuff that they learned from it, they've then transferred into new stuff. So I mean, it's still around in theory, but a stealth helicopter, do we need it? I don't know.
I thought it was
all
cool.
right. Yeah. What do we got next? Andrew? Yeah, keep going. Let's just knock him out here.
Just wanted to show some love. My father was a radar technician. Yeah, I almost said my radar was a father technician in the RAF circa 1960 and working on aircraft like the Gloucester Meteor.
Oh,
Wow.
nice.
That is awesome. Well,
Yeah.
appreciate the love, Andrew,
you.
and it's cool
Andrew.
that your dad did that. Yeah, thank you for
That's
that.
going back a ways. Do you have an opinion, and I'm assuming that's all of you, on all the shortages, pilot maintenance, etc., or ATC, I'm sorry. If so, how do you think we can fix it?
Money.
Yeah.
One word. No, you know what? I think it's quality of life. I think it boils down to, I mean, money's important, but quality of life and education. So quality of life for retention, education for those that want to get in the field, because how many people have we talked to on this channel or in the Make Them Tell You No Facebook group or whatever that just, they're either preconceived notions of why they can't do it, or they just don't know, and they don't know what step one, day one looks like. One of the things I've actually talked to Air Force Reserve Command about this, about simplifying the hiring process, because they're talking about, we have a shortage, we don't get enough qualified applicants to stuff, and it's like, well, that's because nobody knows how to get there. We have unlimited amounts of information, but it's so convoluted because the priorities are like, hey, talk to a recruiter. Well, everybody knows you don't talk to a recruiter if you want to be a pilot. There are other processes to do it.
Yeah.
And so when you have these problems,
first.
Yeah, well then
verbatim.
What is the forefront? The technology, and you have all these pilot influencers that are flying on the airlines that are talking about how much money they're making and how much traveling they're doing and all this stuff. Meanwhile, DOD can't get out of their own way and say, hey, we need to showcase what we do versus, oh, we're going to keep it, a big secret. Kids need to see the job in order to know what they're going to go do.
I think he's talking about probably across the board, dude, civilian and military.
Yeah.
Shortages. I know on the pilot side, it's, for one, it's, you're learning a trade, and it just so happens it takes, if you don't go the military route, which you pay with your soul, if you go the civilian route, you pay with a lot of dollars. And if you look, it's way better now than it was, in the late 90s when I was in college. But like, the amount of money you got to spend up front is ridiculous. And then the first job you used to get was literally, you still qualify for welfare. So, I mean, who would do that?
Right.
And you're
I
on
just
the road
saw an
all the
article
time.
about that.
Yeah.
I just saw an article about that with Delta. I think they're given like up to $40,000 for pilot training or something in Florida.
Now they are, because there's a shortage.
Yeah.
So like Casmo said, they're throwing money at it to help it,
Yeah.
but it's a tremendous time commitment and a tremendous monetary commitment on the pilot side. And my dad was a mechanic, also a trade. I mean, they push like, you got to go to college to all these kids. So I mean, who wants to be a jet mechanic, right? But it's actually my dad was a mechanic. It's a pretty cool job.
But that's the thing, though, is it goes back to what I was saying. For the entry side, it's education. It's education and opportunity. You have to tell them, here's the job, here's the best parts about it, but here are the ways you can do it, and here's how we get you the money to do it. So you have to give them opportunity and education. But on the other side, then it's quality of life. You respect your people, you respect your employees, because what were they saying at our last job there, Gonky? They don't quit bad jobs, they quit bad bosses. I mean, if it's, if you hate going to work, it doesn't matter how much money you throw at it.
Yeah.
Right.
People are just miserable. They're going to look for the first opportunity to get out, versus if you make it something that people actually believe in, they will take a lot less money to do that job. If it's something, I mean, look at the Greatest Generation, World War II. I mean, did they care when they were flying their P-51s? No, they wanted to go kick Hitler's ass.
Yeah, I'd agree. The mill side, the mill side needs to get their focus back to just ass kicking, because then I think that'll attract a lot more people who want to just kick ass instead of the other stuff. On the civilian side, you're already starting to see it. There's the civilian companies are in the business of making money, and they need people. So they are going to start, they're starting programs already, sign-on bonuses, flow-throughs, all kinds of stuff to make it easier and to attract people.
Even then, though, you got the seniority system. So once you're locked in, nobody leaves. But at the 0 to 5 year point, people are jumping. And the reason they jump ship is because of quality of life. Because every pay parity is probably about the same. But where it comes down to is, am I going to see my family to make the same amount of money? Or am I going to be doing 3 and 4 legs a day and getting reassigned and, spending nights in hotels and commuting and all this stuff? Quality of life is what makes people happy, and happy employees stay with companies.
Yep.
Remember the days of the Cadillac a month and, Catch Me If You Can. And it was such a great, glorious job. Quality of life.
He died with Pan Am.
Yeah. All right. Douglas, moving on, sir. I think you got 3 more, and then we'll be back on our track here.
Roger that. That's a new one. There we go. Best trio ever, Mover, Casmo, and the Gonkster. Does anybody
Thanks,
ever
A-Rock.
call you
Thanks,
that?
A-Rock. I agree, but I'm biased. So.
Maybe
Yeah.
in a different order, huh?
The
And
donkey.
definitely not the mover and donkey show like we talked about earlier. Very different.
That's funny.
Yeah.
It's out there.
Maybe a little bit less love here. Where does
Why? I
Casmo
think
get his
Casmo's
haircut?
haircut's amazing.
Oh yeah,
I
it
think
could be a
it's-
I do
compliment.
it, I do it
good.
myself.
Oh, there
I
you
do it
go.
myself. I have a bowl. I just
It's
sit around.
very lovely.
Napsters.
I cut mine Sunday.
Yeah.
Baseline money is required. Quality of life, education, and health are the long term. I think that's a good statement for any job.
Yep. Thanks, man.
Yeah. Happy employees. That's it. Give them a reason to be happy. That's happy cows make happy milk. What's next?
Well, I want to
All right.
tack on to what Gonky said real quick. Like, you either pay with money or you pay with time, and I think that's the hardest part to get young people who maybe are interested in aviation but don't understand. Like, you got to play the long game. Like, there is no like really shortcut. I mean, granted, it's a lot faster now to get to where you want to go if you want to be a commercial pilot, but it still takes a lot of time. It's a lot of upfront investment, either with money or with your time, as in join the military or something like that. So I think for a lot of people, they have big dreams, but they look at that timeline and they look at that cost, and it's just a detractor, and then they get sidetracked doing something else, and the next thing you know, they're 45 and they don't want to do it, so
Same thing same thing from the company's perspective, pay with money or time. I mean, money is time. So if you can make a bunch of money and not have to work as much versus quality of life, Gonky, you know that. I mean, you're talking about that, the quality of life thing,
I live it.
Yeah. All right. Douglas, we've got the next article, which is about the F-16s in Ukraine.
Oh, dude.
Oh,
Ukraine's newly acquired F-16s compared to the Russian Su-35 flanker fighter jet. Ukraine's set to receive 42 F-16s from Denmark and the Netherlands. A lot of people are saying the flanker, like particularly Russian people, saying the flanker is going to kick their butt because it's equipped with very effective radar and long-distance rockets. However, retired Air Force Lieutenant Colonel Dan Hampton believes the multi-role fighter jet, the Su-35, is junk, despite its apparent capabilities. Said the Su-35 is a typical Russian machine that looks good at air shows. Personal opinions is junk. The F-16s are more durable. And then there's a special for you, Mover. F-16s are also multi-role aircrafts. Have at it.
Oh, boy.
First of all, I'm disappointed in the word aircrafts because it's
Aircrafts.
aircraft. You don't add an S. It's very simple. I'm going to remove that, Doug. All right. So, Gonky, this is something that's near and dear to our hearts because you've got experience with Russian aircrafts.
Yeah. Aircrafts. Yes. Very good aircrafts. Yeah, I've read that article. And first of all, I've never heard. Is that guy a fighter pilot, ex-fighter pilot, former, current?
Yeah. He's retired. Dan Hampton wrote the book Viper Pilot or Driver, Viper something. And he's got some fiction books. He was a patch wearer, talked about seed in his books.
I mean, like Casmo, even helicopters attack. Do you ever refer to that's a durable? That Apache's awfully durable. No, man. Like,
I don't use that word.
Reliable.
Yeah. When somebody says, hey, that jet just looks good at air shows, and everything else is garbage, that tells me they probably never actually fought one. Because, when I was active duty Navy, we studied the MiG-29, we studied the flanker series of aircraft, and that was kind of the, that's kind of what we all thought in our heads, which was, we're just being pro-American. But then when I went to Malaysia and actually got to fight MiG-29s and Su-30s, which is similar to the Su-35, I realized real quick that, no, these airplanes are pretty capable. And then also, when I first started flying the Hornet, MiG-29 was a baseline threat. And, their capabilities weren't that good. And then all of a sudden, I believe it was the Air Force did some exercises with the Indians and their flankers. And then like literally overnight, it was, oh, hey, holy cow. These airplanes are a lot better than we thought. So for him to say that they're junk is pretty ignorant, in my opinion. I've fought Su-30s, which the Malaysian Su-30s don't have the high-end Russian electronics in them. the Russians basically sold them the airplane, and then they have a little bit different avionics and radar in it. But regardless, BVR, that thing, I would not want to fight that airplane BVR in an F-16 based on what I saw, because those guys get up in the 50s, Mach 1.3, and they are lobbing stuff at long range. And it's no fun.
The headline is Ukraine will receive 61 F-16s, 42 from the Netherlands, 19 from Denmark. I don't remember. Sorry, Doug, if you already mentioned that in the article. So these are the midlife upgrade MLU jets. They're upgraded jets, kind of a Block 50-ish standard. But they're not. So they're about what American F-16s were 10 years ago, right? So, they're good airplanes, reliable, but it's not like Block 70, conformal fuel tanks, ESA radars, all, there's a lot more to it than just here's some F-16s and go. Now, are they more capable than a MiG-29, from the 90s and 80s? Well, sure. But to say that, and this has been a very common thing, it's not a game changer. It's because what do you get when you get F-16s? You have to have maintenance, which they're going to get. You have to have qualified pilots, which they're going to get. I don't have a problem with any fighter pilot in the world jumping in an F-16 and being qualified in between 2 and 3 months, even shorter. I mean, it's a very easy jet to fly. It's difficult to employ, especially when you're not used to some of the systems and stuff and missiles. I don't know if they're going to add AMRAAMs, but even if you do, they're not unlimited. You don't have unlimited. We're already running out of stuff over there. You don't have unlimited assets to give them, and it's not a full up shooting war as it is, because what is right next to the border? The Russian SAM systems, the IADs.
Yep.
So you have to have a robust SEAD programs, suppression of enemy air defense. There's a lot more to it than just here's some jets, go win the war. Now, is the F-16 a very capable fighter? Absolutely. Is a Su-35 very capable? Yes. Do I want to go? I will say this about any fighter that you put up there. If I'm sitting in the seat, I believe that I'm the guy that's going to kill every single one of the red guys every single time, no matter what. Is that realistic? I don't know, but I would say that the standard fighter pilot weapon school answer of it depends is going to apply here, because I haven't really even seen any Su-35s in this war. It's mostly Su-27s and maybe some Su-30s and mostly the Frogfoot. I mean, it's a ground war.
They're not using they're not using.
No. Because it's a contested, denied, degraded environment. You're denying it with either the HIMARS and the Patriots on one side and the double-digit SAMs on the other, so that it's not going to change a whole lot unless you've got a robust SEAD package that's going to take down one side's IADs, integrated air defense, and then you try to gain air superiority after that. If you don't have that, it doesn't matter what you do, because and again, if they're bombing your base, where are you going to land the F-16? It's not very good on roads.
Yeah, the F-16 is literally just another pawn in the game. And if you don't use it as part of a well thought out, layered offensive or defensive plan, it's going to get smoked. Right. Or it could dominate. If it's a great plan, it could dominate, but it's just a piece of the puzzle.
Well, but back to your point, Gonky, I agree with you. I mean, no one, I think I'm hoping it was just taken out of context, because a lot of times I've seen articles written from stuff we've said where, it's like, well, Lemoyne says this. And it's like, okay, I've made it first off, but second, that's not what I meant. But, I hope that was just a little bit of hubris and, hey, I'm the world's greatest fighter pilot and F-16 is the greatest jet in the world, which I agree with. And, screw everybody else because, America number one. However, if you're looking at this from a realistic, objective perspective, if that jet is airborne and I'm fighting a 4 or 8 ship of Su-35s, it's a big deal. It is a very potent threat. It is a very capable threat, and I would not underestimate it. And with any aircraft, even a Raptor or an F-35, because there's a lot going on there. And you underestimate your enemy at your own peril. Also, the Russians do electronic attack very well. You know, they jamming pods and stuff like that. They went a different route than stealth, and they do that very well. And I would hate to underestimate them just because, you know, oh, we got these F-16s and now we're going to win the war. Slow down. Tactics win wars, not equipment.
Yep.
Casmo, I'm sorry. What do you have for this?
No, I know. When I was dogfighting the Scorpion attack helicopter down in South America, I was thinking these same things. No, but I wonder too, like, it's not just right. It's not just the equipment, it's the pilots. And it's been pretty much proven that the Russian Air Force pilots just don't have near the flight time and the experience. So you can give them a really nice aircraft, but they may not be able to put it, all the way to the edge of its capability. But then the same can be said for, like you said, with the F-16. So I wonder, just a lot of this just seems like messaging, more like, like just it's more support. And of course, where else is Ukraine going to get stuff? Because they were using Soviet era stuff anyway, right? Like MiG-29s and MiG-21s and stuff like that. So they're not going to get any more from Russia. So they got to get something from somewhere. And it's at this point almost like a numbers game of just, do we have enough stuff to put up in the air to thwart, attacks? Because I don't think that they're necessarily their thoughts on a grander scale is to turn around and counterattack and invade Russia necessarily. I mean, there's been some push that way, but not necessarily intent to take anything. So I don't know.
You bring up a good point. Sorry.
I was just going to say that, I mean, that is the answer, right? Is it's tactics over all the other stuff, because the tactics don't come with the jets. We have classified 3-1, 3-3. We're not going to give them our playbook necessarily, because who's going to exploit that? We as Americans, okay, here's your equipment. We're giving this through our foreign allies. You're getting these Dutch F-16s, but we're not going to give you, okay, here's exactly what we would do in this situation, because if we do that, the Russians and the Chinese are going to exploit it. And I mean, you have to be careful with, it's the same thing we were talking about the other week with DCS. You can't show everything, because people will sit there and go, okay, yeah, he did this at this time. This is an American tactic. Okay, yeah, copy. We know what to do now. So the jets, I mean, they're capable, but there's more to it. Go ahead, Gonky. I'm sorry.
No, Casmo brings up a good point. The mindset of a Western trained fighter pilot is a lot of autonomy. So you get a lot of info, you make decisions, and you execute based on the current scenario. The Russian doctrine, generally speaking, at least when I was in, was very much ground-based control. And I actually got to experience that. We were doing like a mixed exercise with the MiG-29s when I was in Malaysia, and we were using the more Russian doctrine, and it completely crushed me. I mean, I had no idea what was going on. You're just waiting for orders, basically, and it was not effective. But MiG-29, Su-35, those are very different airplanes. So I don't know if they've updated anything since then, but if it's the same command and control mentality, you're right, Casmo. I mean, that's a big, in my mind, that's a big negative.
Yeah. And someone in chat wants to disagree with me, and that's fine. You can disagree all you want about who has more flight time, but what I'm talking about is quality of flight time. So some people have 1,000 hours, some people have the same hour 1,000 times. And the bottom line, just like Gonky said, like, that's not quality. Just doing idiot circles in the sky, waiting for someone else to tell you to do something, is not the same thing as the type of stuff that Western aviators get to do. So, because
what happens when you take it all away? You jam the comms, you jam the GPS, you jam everything. The link goes down, and now you're just autonomous, raging singletons, like a roving motorcycle gang.
Sounds fun.
I don't know. Yeah. Well, we had that until we, the number 3 frats number 2, because he turns hot and thinks that it's the same guy. And oh boy. But I guess my point is, I mean, that is an environment where I would not want to be learning tactics.
No.
Like, I would not want to be learning how to employ the F-16. And I know they're not, but they're still going to be new to the jet. And you're going to be new to the jet in real world conditions. Now, granted, the opposite of what I said is true, where we give them this equipment and we kind of learn how to exploit some weaknesses on the other side. But so far, and Casmo, this is a segue into that. Douglas, thank you. We haven't seen an all-out, air-to-air shooting war. In fact, there hasn't been much because of the SAM, IADS laydown. You haven't seen a couple onesie twosie dogfights, but there really hasn't been like a 4vx where it's 4 Ukrainian fighters versus however many Russian fighters, and they just duke it out over the skies, like Battle of Britain. It's been, a couple. I mean, what are most of the shoot downs been? Some kind of strike where a Patriot or a Russian SAM shoots down. Yeah, they are manpad. Yeah, they just shoot down. And really, the air picture in Ukraine, I know, Casmo, I'm going to let you get to this in a second, but it's been drones. It's just little drones that are just lobbing little grenades or kamikaze drones. In fact, there was a thing recently, a Russian bomber was destroyed by a kamikaze drone. I mean, $150. There you go. It's over. Done. See you later. You don't even need an air picture. I know, Casmo, you wanted to talk about it, so please continue.
Yeah, well, I mean, for one thing, for that, I mean, obviously that's outside of my wheelhouse, but it does seem strange. But I guess because of the proximity, right? Because it seems like, I mean, the moment you take off, you're basically within like Super SAM range. And I mean, how do you get into a big fight in that, relatively small bit of airspace? Because you're right, we did see some stuff kind of early on, but it's sort of these onesie twosies types events. So, I mean, what are your thoughts on that? As far as, is it just because it's such a small playground and there's these high threat systems that can reach so far? I mean, I know aircraft were getting shot at from SAMs, on the other side of the border.
I think when you're having to fly low altitude and that is you're just defending your city, it'd be interesting to get one of those guys on here to talk about it within the limits of what they can, because I think, we've done ambush caps as Red Air, Gonky, we've done short range commits as Blue Air. It's a different world when you're talking inside of a 20-mile range. When you're inside this 20-mile bubble and everything is within that, dude, that's a whole different world than we've got 100 miles to set the picture, get the call, everybody's pacing, everybody knows where everybody is. And, now we're just on timelines. Well, if you're that close, you don't have a timeline. You're just, you really are the roving motorcycle gang. So the skirmishes are much closer. And I think that's why you see a lot of blue on blue or red on red shoot downs of SAMs, because it is a nasty, nasty picture. And I'm sure there's a lot of, comm jamming, radar jamming. I'm sure the Trons that are being thrown out in that battle space are, stuff we've never seen. And I think it will change tactics in the future.
Right. Yeah. Rocky? And look, the end of the day, because I see a lot of back and forth in the chat too. I'm just kind of following along. Like, by no means is anyone here saying this stuff is easy. It's not. It's actually very hard. What we're watching with a lot of the stuff, and especially on the helicopter side too, is learning, because you can read all the books and talk about all the tactics you want to do, but up until it's time to actually do it and experience it, there's just so much complexity that people just don't really think about in war, whether it's logistics, whether it's just space and time. And so I think that, yeah, we're watching both sides learn a lot. And then you're just in an environment that, at least for us in the West, we probably never really thought about that much, of having that sort of such a narrow area to fight. I mean, at least not since like the Cold War, like the Fulda Gap type scenario. And that's so ancient history as far as we're concerned, tactics wise.
Well, the other thing, I mean,
look at. Sorry. I was just to say, look at our historical, how we've enforced no-fly zones. American doctrine is we're in a different country and we cap. Right. And then we push the line forward and back as we need. We don't take off
You're into it.
We don't take off into it. We move, so we build range. And in fact, and that's an argument for how it would change if there were NATO involvement, because you would be moving that line way far back and then cleaning out the air picture. But look at Syria. That was a seed war. It wasn't even a war. It was seed. Libya, all those, lower intensity, I guess, relative to stuff we've done. That was, the Block 50s going out there and then establishing, we're going to take down all their SAMs and then we're going to establish air superiority. And now we're going to control the picture. But here they don't have that luxury. They're shooting harms off of MiG-29s with no it's just, okay, good luck. See you later. And that's, I think that's one of the reasons they're happy, because it adds a little bit more capability with that.
Yeah. I mean, you're basically got two countries fighting in their backyard, right? So you bring up a good point. So when I flew for the RMAF, like when I was fighting the first couple times I fought the Su-30, nobody died. Like we would take our shots, high altitude, high speed, and then we were out. And because I briefed a DCA, well, apparently they briefed a DCA, and so after a couple times of this, I'm like, guys, is there any flow required? They're like, what are you talking about? I'm like, what if you have to like go somewhere? They're like where? And I found out, it's a smaller country. They got 8 airplanes, right? Just like 60 Vipers, whatever. Like that's very valuable asset to them. They are like launching, like they're not willing to accept high risk mindset, right? So I think if Ukraine's going to use these F-16s, that's probably what they're going to do. And if you're Russia, the giant bear, I mean, you can play the long game, dude. Right? You sit there all day and just keep throwing stuff up at them. I mean, I don't know. It depends. You can speculate all day, but overall, it's not as. It's just sad to me that like people are literally dying over there for.
Well, and that's the thing is it's not as cut and dry. Like I don't think we're getting an accurate picture from what's actually going on from either side at any point. Like I don't think,
of course not.
I don't think people are getting the truth. Just like we get the Ghost of Kiev. You're gonna get legends. You're gonna get stories. Fake. You're gonna get truth. Right, but you're gonna get all these different aspects, and we will not know until the dust is settled. So, or if you have, if you're actively monitoring it with a security clearance, which we would never talk about on this channel. So, there's that. Anyway, Douglas, does not before Douglas. Remember, it's not. This is not DoD endorsement or any employer endorsement. This is just our stupid opinions. Douglas, we got any thing from the chat here, sir?
Let's do some super chats. This is good. Tom White, $9.99. F-16 versus Su-35, and as he was typing this, Mover is answering his question and addressing Ukrainians having to learn them. So there we go.
Yeah, it's already handled.
Connor, oh man, I like that thumbnail. I miss snowmobiles. Anyway, aspiring military aviator from Wyoming. I'm pursuing active duty AF or Navy. Officer recruiters have been difficult to get a hold of. Tips, thanks.
They are difficult to get a hold of. I would turn my focus to the reserve or guard and go to millrecruiter.com and find a unit that's hiring that flies what you want to fly and the location you want to fly, and then go to their board and get hired.
Yep. And if you want to do the Navy thing, I would recommend you didn't put like if you're in college, you could do ROTC, but I would do OCS because you can tell them, I just want to be a pilot. If I don't pass for whatever reason, I go bye-bye. And to do that, you have to get a hold of an officer recruiter. Don't just go down to the little Navy thing at the mall and, try to join there. That ain't going to work. Because they will, like Casmo said, enlist first is what you're going to hear verbatim. I know this because that's what they tried to do to me. So got to get a hold of an officer recruiter. And the first step is college degree, and no matter what branch you're in. And then if you're going to go OCS, which I recommend for Navy, you got to go to OCS. So that's the path.
Unless you're Army, right? You can fly Apaches with as an associate's street to seat. Is that what's going on with that?
Yeah,
Casmo?
to be a warrant, I don't even think you need an associate's degree. I don't think you need any degree.
Oh, okay.
I mean, it may have changed, but yeah, I don't believe so.
All right. Well, there you go.
Assuming, and I think this refers to the discussion previously, that SUs work. Russia's had a bit of an issue with that, as you say, though, and underestimating the enemy is bad news on any side.
Yeah. I mean, assuming anything works, right? I mean, yes, they've had their issues in general, but I think a lot of that too is they play down to their enemy. So I think you're seeing that on the ground side a little bit. Is they're not beefing up anything beyond what they think they have to do for whatever they're trying to do. So, I mean, I think they'll they'll either match the threat or they won't, because they don't need to because of
Well,
the current IADs.
And Jordan, I mean, don't get me wrong. Western airplanes, I think, are superior in engineering assembly. I think they're better airplanes, but you look at Russia and China, they're throwing numbers up there. And
Right.
the baseline of Russia, China, whatever is getting better. Right. So I mean, these are capable airplanes, but they're 1-to-1, like the Western stuff, I believe, is better, but what they have is not bad.
Yeah, and it also too, Russian engineering, while not as refined, is good, but it's also made for very harsh conditions. These jets are, I mean, they're not the most elegant, but they will still get they're like big trucks, I mean, they're still gonna, the radar may not work great or whatever, but these jets are going to get airborne. They're not going to be like, oh, well, we're going to step to the spare. They're going to just take what they got.
You can't take off from a dirt road in an F-16, but you can in MiG-29.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. It's just not a game changer. That's all. It's a force enhancer. It's a great jet. It's going to help them overall, but it is not an overnight success story by any stretch of the imagination. All right, moving on. Okay, Douglas. Sorry, go ahead.
Which do you want to move on to? More super chats?
No, I didn't know you had more. Go ahead.
Oh, yeah. So Techno Faisal, who's given us a lot of comments over the last couple of weeks. I'm not absolutely sure what he's saying, honestly. So you guys can...
Yeah.
I mean, American aid.
You may need a reattack on that one.
That's a more political. No, that's a more political thing. He's basically saying, whose side do you choose with the corruption? Here's what I'll say to that. I think governments are governments, but people are good.
We're in a weird time. Next.
Yeah. I mean, people are good. So I feel for the people that are affected by this and that are losing their homes and losing their lives. That is, to me, the thing here. It's not, we don't choose sides. We just want an ending that gives people the ability to live their lives.
This one made me laugh when I saw it come up, because I would like to know the same thing. There's a weekly retirement donation from Tim, and he would like to know where you're getting drones for $150. I'd buy 3.
Amazon, yeah. Amazon.
Janitor is back, is also a consistent contributor to the channel. Casmo.
We're talking about that later. Yep.
Are we? Okay.
Yeah, we're talking about that later. Yeah, we got a whole thing for that.
Great.
Thank you, though. Thank you, Janitor.
John Oldham, hello again, gentlemen. Still waiting to see USMC pilot versus Navy F-18 pilot experiences. That would make a good maybe series of mover episodes. Once had a pair full after takeoff from Kadena.
So I've interviewed Special on the channel. Special will come to the channel eventually. We just, you got to get schedules aligned. So that's in the works. So next.
Do chicks dig fighter pilots? Yes.
Not
at first. Not
anymore.
The shine wears off rather quickly.
A little at first.
They've lost the loving feeling. Next.
One more. With all due respect, these comments have a 150 character limit, or you would have gotten the rest of the story. Until then, have a Boilermaker on me.
What am I missing?
This story.
Oh.
Full afterburn takeoff.
Oh, yeah. Cool. Well,
Sounds
all
good.
right. Thank you for that. The next topic, I'm going to skip. No, we're not going to skip. We're going to do it. Pilot dies in flight. Douglas.
Yellow light.
There we go.
What's the yellow light? He died.
Pilot dies after medical emergency on
show it.
flight from Miami to Chile. Part of a 3-member crew is LATAM Airlines, was bound for, I believe, Santiago. Forced the plane to make an emergency landing. He went to the head and passed away from a coronary incident. Had medical assistance on landing, but they didn't have enough to save him. So there you go.
Is he 57? 57 years old?
Easy there. I just turned 57.
I'm asking.
He was.
That's what he.
Let me look. This was in the other story. 56. Ivan
56.
Anduar, 56.
Doug, I'm gonna need you to use like Navy fighter pilot speak. What is coronary?
His heart gave out.
Oh, okay.
I'm sorry. I have Marine friends. The thing that pumps the blood to die.
I gotcha.
He ceased to exist. That's sad.
That is
I
sad.
mean, I think a lot of people are drawing links because they think this seems to be happening more. But if anything, it's an argument for 2-pilot cockpit.
Yeah,
I mean, having multiple people in the cockpit, even with AI, I think it's an argument to maintain at least 2 people or augment it, 3 or 4. I think that's kind of the lesson learned here. Is not it's tragic, but having multiple people in the cockpit, I mean, they were able to land successfully. And every time you see these incidents, that's why you just don't want to risk it with that many people on board.
Yeah, single pilot and an airliner, I think it's a bad idea. Real bad.
Yeah, it's just not made for it. I'm the first guy to say I want to be by myself, but
not an airliner.
Not an airliner. If you're in something designed to go single seat, like an F-16,
right.
Sure. But
with an ejection seat.
Yeah, and a passenger of 1.
Yeah, exactly.
The most important guy on the plane, doesn't matter what I'm flying.
That's right.
So, all right. While Doug does that, I want to show you guys, speaking of pilots that are unhappy.
I love this video.
I want to know everything about this.
So do I.
So United,
I want to know how long he's been on the trip.
I think he came home.
Of course he did.
Hold on.
Sure, he's trying to get
came home and decided not today, ISIS, and
that's it.
He's grounded. I left his cell phone on his. He's 62 years old. United. The real question I have is who carries an axe?
Right.
Yeah.
In their POV. But the dude's walking with this. It looks like something from Scarface. He's just like, I had enough.
Oh, I should have. I didn't know we were going to talk about this. I should have sent you the picture.
There it is.
Somebody did like a meme of falling down that movie.
Wait. Now, if you're going to disarm a guy with an axe, that's not the way I would do it. But
oh no,
man went to jail.
No.
Jones said just hit his breaking point. Was trying to get rid of issues for everyone waiting. Man was just trying to lean forward. Was removed from the schedule and is on leave.
So this actually happened. Similar thing happened to one of my friends who's a captain, and he's like, dude, I just drove through it. So he just drove through. Why use a crash axe, dude? He's in his F-250. He's like, I just drove through it. He's like, it actually came down pretty easy. I was like, really?
That's not a crash axe from an airplane. We do carry crash axe. No. They're small, which is always funny when TSA is like, you can't have this. And it's like, dude, I got a crash axe behind me. But that was like, dude is like chopping wood.
Yeah, like he stops on his way home to get firewood.
Yeah.
Or and he's in Denver, so that makes sense. What I will say though is that this is a good example of why mental health is so important, because before you reach the breaking point of hacking at a thing, there's probably some steps in between, and a lot of airlines have like a project wingman or some kind of pilot help within the union that you can go talk to somebody before you potentially put your multi-million-dollar career at risk by doing something. Because you see it a lot. I mean, this is not the first guy. Obviously, it's, everything is viral in 2023, but you do see pilots, some of them are very tragic stories where it's some level of taking some life. But, you do hear of this kind of thing happen. It's because it's a high-stress job. You're gone a lot. You're a fixer. You believe you can fix everything for everybody. And sometimes when, you just hit the breaking point, stuff like this happens. And I hope, more importantly than anything, I hope the guy gets the help that he needs to work through whatever he's going through, because as funny as it is, yeah, it's not.
It's funny because we've all felt it. Like he's doing something where like, gosh, dude, how did it feel? Did it feel as good as I think it's gonna feel?
it's like Killdozer, right? You know, you've heard the story of Killdozer where the guy he finally loses it because of the issues he had with the local government. Well, I mean, yeah, it's a cool story, but at the end, the guy lost his life, and you know, it's there are so many different ways that you can get the help you need and resolve issues other than this. Although I did hear a comment, somebody said he was wound tight because he's wearing long sleeves, and I will say people that wear long sleeves are not wound too tight. I wear long sleeves all the time. Yep. I think it looks more professional with a tie. I think I just the tie with the short sleeves, it just looks like you work at the IRS. You look, I can't.
Weird. Plus, it keeps. I don't like the sun on me, dude. So it keeps the sun off me.
You don't put shades up in the window. I don't even know where I'm going. Everything's covered, man. We're just going.
We're following the line. Look, we're on the line.
It's like on the descent checklist. You know, all right, let me take all these down.
Y'all have shades? We had to use the cards. You know, like we had to get the.
I go on Amazon.
The check.
Just buy some on Amazon.
Dude, we've got nice shades. I mean, it blacks it out in there.
Oh yeah. Yeah, the Airbus comes with shades, right? Doesn't it have like an integrated shade thing? Yeah.
Oh yeah, it's real nice.
Yeah. All right, moving on. The Russians have crashed on the moon, Douglas.
It's their first lunar mission in 47 years, and the headline was not subtle: smashes into the moon in failure. This was the Luna 25. It spun out of control and crashed into the moon. There was a good quote down here. The apparatus moved into an unpredictable orbit and ceased to exist as a result of a collision with the surface of the moon. The part that I found maybe, I don't know, noteworthy, but it kind of hit home was there was a Russian scientist, Mikhail Marov, leading Soviet physicist and astronomer, was hospitalized in Moscow after the news of the failure. He said, "This was perhaps the last hope for me to see a revival of our lunar program." Very sad.
Yeah.
Wow.
You hate to see it.
Yeah, I think space exploration is kind of
cool.
Definitely not what it used to be. Any kind of setback like this is like, because when's the last time like people were at the moon? 60s, 70, early.
Some 70s? Might say they still there, or they've never been there.
Oh, jeez.
Which conspiracy theory are you going with today?
The Tic Tac came from the.
I'm going to be quoted on Twitter again.
Here we go.
But actually, they did fly over and take pictures of the lunar module, not the module, but the little dune buggy and the flag. So they've got pictures of that. But it goes back to the same thing, right? I mean, if you want science to progress, does it matter who's doing it, or are we still, America number one, whatever?
Well, that's been one of those things where like we have sort of gotten past politics, right? Is space exploration. Yeah. Like even when stuff was bad, you still had like Russian cosmonauts, and so I agree with you. I mean, we laugh because it's our nature, but because we all grew up, the big Russian bear, so it's funny to us when they screw up. But yeah, this is one of those regions where it's like, man, that sucks.
Yeah. Well, until SpaceX, really, the Russians were our only way to get to the space station.
Exactly.
That was because once the shuttle program, we kind of just, I don't know. So,
and I remember that being a huge deal when everything kicked off in Ukraine. Like there was drama because like we were still relying on them for some stuff. So yeah.
But even if you are in a space race with the Russians, they need to get a win every now and then to make it a race. So, if we want humanity to progress, and the only way we can progress is by entering in a space race with the Russians, right? They need to have some successes. So I'm looking forward. I think Indian Space Agency is in 2 days. They're trying. I think they were trying different poles of the moon, but I hope they're successful, and I hope it does create competition because we need to go and explore more than just, low Earth orbit. We need to go out and the moon and Mars and beyond.
Space Force, bro. Next fiscal year.
So,
yeah. Don't let the military get involved. That's all.
Yeah, it'll 10 times the budget.
Moving on, we've got some voice messages, and this voice sounds so familiar. I can't put my finger on it, so to speak.
Hey guys, it's
Here we go.
DC here, BC's evil twin brother. Last week, the Dutch Air Force scrambled 2 Vipers, Falcons, in a quick reaction alert because a Russian Tu-95
right
strategic bomber was flying over or near Denmark at NATO territory. Later that day, a similar incident happened near the Shetland Islands and 2 British Tornadoes were scrambled. I have 2 questions. First is, why do the Russians do this? Is it just a show of force and woohoo, look at how long my bomber is? Or is there something more strategic to it, like let's see what their QRA response times are? And the second question is, will you ever stand by for a QRA response? And what actually happens during such an intercept? Is it just radio contact, or do you fly real close, or do you actually get a missile lock on the plane? And thanks for taking the time to answer the question. I'm asking for a friend not called BC.
That's a whole episode right there. The guy,
I love this guy.
Might as well. You got the. I know it's great to have people that watch all the time. I mean, it really is. It makes you feel warm and fuzzy.
It's a good question. Good questions, man.
So what? I've already forgotten the questions. Why do they do that? A mix of things. I mean, geopolitical reasoning isn't always direct, right? You do want to test awareness, test responses, but you also just want to show that you can.
Yeah, I mean, why do we steam aircraft carriers all over the world?
Why do we?
Projection.
Right. So, yeah, and his second question was, right.
What do you do when you get there?
Have you ever done it? Have you ever done it? And what happens when you get there? Gonky, that's your. I mean, I've done alert. I haven't done scramble to intercept the Russians. So
yeah. So I was like, I was manning Ready 15 or whatever. I was the guy on alert, basically on deployment. And I've mentioned it before. The Indians launched a bear at us, and me and my flight lead. I was just a wingman at the time. The flight lead was a Marine, and they scrambled us to go intercept. And it's a completely separate / funny, typical Gonky story. But I had the wrong. They changed the cards like every day. I had the old card, so I talked to nobody for about the first half of the intercept. I was completely calm out. I watched my lead blast off the end of the ship, and he squatted the jet like 90 degrees right off the cat shot and went. And I was like, that's rad. So I did the same thing. I picked him up on radar, and I knew what we were, because, when I left the ready room, they told me what it was. And I followed him, and then I picked the bear up on my own radar, and we got within about 20 miles of that Indian bear, and he did a 180. And by then I had figured out my error, and I had joined on my lead, and through the Helen Keller signals, I was able to get on the right freak. Correct. Yes. So that's no idea what happens comm-wise, but as far as what actually happens, you launch, you intercept, and depending on the weapon's posture, which us was just to escort. The whole idea, so they had a rule: no foreign vessel, ship, airplane, helicopter could fly past the carrier unless it was escorted by a U.S. asset. Could be an E2, could be an S3, could be a Hornet.
Wombat.
It could, yeah. So, I mean, they've had. We've been intercepting bear bombers for like decades, and it's really nothing new. And like Wombat said, they're just, they want to test your response. They want to. It's
Mover said that. I just said that. You call me Wombat.
Did I call you Wombat? Gosh, dude,
sure did.
Mover said that, but yeah.
Nobody ever says I agree with Mover. It's always I agree with Casmo and I agree with Gonky, but never Mover. I'm the third wheel here.
I was doing a flight down to Malaysia, and they were like, hey, we need you back for operational stuff. And I flew back, and what it was, the Singaporeans had launched, and they were flying right along what they recognize as the border. And the Malaysians were like flying along what they recognize as the border. So it's, just countries just playing the game. That's all. Nothing to see here.
Unless you're the wing girls, in which case a 2-ship of flankers will just fly right by your carrier. Sorry. Did I bring up that movie again? Called to Duty. Yeah. Sorry for making that guy mad. Cool. Yeah. Douglas, I understand you've got some stuff for us.
Got a couple more super chats. Connor is back. I've been putting time into DCS. Curious if holding centerline on takeoff is equally as sensitive. I noticed Mover does a good job of that. You guys want to take a second and talk about that?
You don't hold centerline in a fighter.
Maybe I was just thinking of going straight down the runway, which I have trouble with.
Yeah. So actually, you don't because of how we, even for an interval takeoff or whatever, we don't go straight center line, because if we did that, if somebody aborts or whatever with our intervals 10 seconds, 15 seconds, 20 seconds or whatever, we'd run into each other. So usually for both takeoff and landing, we stagger. So you take the opposite side of whatever your flight lead, and your flight lead should give the wingman the upwind side, but we pick a side, not full offset like you'd be doing a formation takeoff, but just enough to give a guy room. Also, because if you take off and they eject, you don't want them ejecting into you, which could be a problem. But landing, this happened at Nellis not too long ago. Guy got really hurt because they ran into each other, and the CADM actually hooked into the cockpit and like hit the guy and nearly killed him. Because just on the go around, they ran into each other. And so we offset for that. And then if you're doing a formation takeoff or landing, obviously you take your half of the runway or whatever.
But if you're going solo, Connor, I think DCS is way sensitive. And I think it's just a fact that you can't feel anything, right? In the real jet, you kind of feel, if she's starting to drift one way or another, you can compensate it. But in DCS, you have no idea until you're actually like off center line. So I agree with you. It's more sensitive, but like Mover said, you rarely, you're almost always at least in a two ship.
Yeah, and also too with DCS, I mean it's an equipment thing, right? Because the pedals are usually like this, versus in real life they're about like that, and you can just pressure with the jet. I have tipped over the Viper in the sim in DCS more than in any real sim or real life, because I've never done that, thankfully. But the thing just tips over because it's so sensitive, and then you hit the nose wheel steering, and then it engages and it goes. So and it's not like I've got my tail wheel in a Pitts S2, and it is tough to fly. Gonky, if you ever get time to go do the DCS thing again, when we go do the World War II fighters, you're gonna ground loop.
Oh, 100%. 100%.
Casmo?
I was just starting in the air.
Yeah, I think anything with DCS, like hardware is the limiting factor, just like you said, because obviously I've never flown fighters, but I think about like in a 7.3 when I'm rolling, there's so much pressure going on that you're able to make more granulated movements than you can with probably typical flight sim hardware that you have. No matter now you can tighten things down and stuff, and then that kind of leads to its own other problems. But yeah, I think hardware makes things like that much harder than it is in real life. And then of course, yeah, just the feel in general. You have a sense, you're able to tell what's happening with the aircraft in real life with any aircraft.
That's a good point.
Before you can in a sim. I mean, maybe with VR it's a little bit better, but it's still not the same.
No, you're right. It's the haptics, right? Because your butt senses things before anything else. So if you put a correction and you take half out, the seat of the pants is already telling you what how it's responding.
Right.
Versus, even if you've got a butt shaker or whatever, it's not the same. It's not giving you that yaw
how many
or
times
whatever.
On landing you've put in power or taken power out before there's any indication that you need to. You do it all the time, every landing, because you're feeling, you're like, we're about to lose it. Like we're about to start descending faster than I want to. Let me just put in a little bit of power right here. Happens all the time.
That's good. Thanks, Connor.
Is the crash axe stored next to the money printer in any of
your?
That's
a real thing. It's actually a real thing. We're in the 7.3. It's right behind. Is it behind the FO?
Yeah,
it's like right back there.
Yeah,
pretty sure it's
No, I think it's behind the captain's.
No, wait, yeah.
I never use it.
I
guess you're right, because that's where the big circuit breaker panel that's always in the way is. Yeah, it's back there, and that's the thing you grab during an egress as the FO.
Sorry, I'm pushing things along a little bit. Even during the Cold War, the Soviets were actually good human beings about space exploration. I'd love to know, as would I, what was in the letter of congratulations the Soviets sent to the U.S. after Apollo 11.
Oh, I don't know.
I didn't even know they did that. That would be cool.
I didn't either. Yeah, that'd be good to know. Thank you.
And we've got John Ross with a Gonky Fund donation for encouraging the interplanetary space discussion and spend an episode on SpaceX. You could do a space episode.
Thanks, John.
Elon Musk, if you're watching, I'm available.
Yeah.
I'm sure he is.
We're caught up.
Probably blocked now. All right, cool. Let's continue with the voice because this is a segue into our mental health minute. So, can you remove that? I don't know how to remove that. There we go.
That'll do it.
All right, here we go. Roy asks about weather, and Roy sounds a lot like BC for some reason.
I'm over at Gonky. Just to avoid this becoming the BC podcast, it's his brother sending in the message this time. So, hi from Roy from Norway. Wanted to ask you guys about weather, if that affects the pilots and the airframes in any way. So I'm based in Norway, and we have a lot of exercises here of NATO coming in and checking out the big snow and skiing and stuff. I was wondering how that is for you guys flying the airframes. Do you also get affected by the hot and cold weather? And do you test and have exercises in regards to those external factors? Let me hear. I'm curious to hear what your answers are on that one, and keep up the good work, guys. See ya.
Yes.
I never check weather.
Weather airfield notes told Sid Self wants checked. That's why it's number one. Remember that time Gonky with a Willy Willy thing happened and everybody got yelled at?
Yeah.
VFA 204.
Oh, well.
Yes. So to answer the question, weather is probably the single most non-tactical, and sometimes it's a tactical consideration. I mean, that is the thing. Yeah, and it can drive bad decisions and it can drive good decisions. But your question was so multifaceted. Yes, cold weather jets perform better, but you have more considerations like icing and overcast clouds, overcast ceilings, stuff like that. Wintertime stuff. Warm weather doesn't perform as well. High, hot, heavy, that's a bad thing, especially helicopters, or even jets. I mean, there's stories of A-10s in Afghanistan that were skipping off the runway as they took off, because they didn't have the thrusties to go flying just yet. So, yeah. And really, as far as what kills pilots, I would argue it's probably in the top 5, non-tactical things that does, right? Because we either make a bad decision to go flying or bad decision not to divert, or, we get spatially disoriented where we don't know what's up and down. I've done a lot of AIB reviews in general where it was a contributing factor because some low time pilot was, got into a situation where they didn't, perfectly good airplane ends up striking terra firma. So, and we'll segue to when to say no here in a second, but what are your thoughts on just weather in general, guys?
Yeah, it's doing a big like NATO exercise or a red flag or whatever, you're talking about putting a lot of airplanes in a piece of sky, and it's already dynamic and complex enough. And then if Mother Nature comes in there with some weather, and then you're flexing to like these alternate game plans, like literally on the fly, we will adjust the game plan if we think we could do the training safely. But like we were saying, I would say it doesn't always just happen to junior guys, right? So it doesn't take much to knock that first domino. Sometimes it's weather, and it could just, where it can lead you down, a plethora of like bad places, which I think we've probably all been there. Most of the time, generally, it's always like, for me, it's always been like fuel issues, right? Because then everybody's adjusting their fuel, and then usually, well, is the weather getting worse or not? And you're trying to do this fight. It just adds another layer of uncertainty and complexity to an already very complicated scenario. So, Cavu, nice, beautiful day is always nice, but wars do happen when there's bad weather, so you do have to go out and at least get some experience in it. But yeah, it's tough.
Casmo.
Yeah, just in general, not even with aviation, but just the military in general. Weather is a huge consideration on the ground side as well. It could be as simple as, like in a coin environment, hey, do we really want to go out on this ground patrol because the weather is so bad the medevac aircraft can't even get to us, and we're going out into the middle of nowhere Afghanistan, and if somebody gets hurt, how are we getting them out? So things like that are a huge consideration. You talk about using night vision goggles. Well, when it's a no illume night, okay, so it's overcast, you don't have any moon, you don't have any ambient lighting, those NVGs don't help a whole lot. So yeah, weather's massive across the board in the military, and then yeah, it's exacerbated in aviation, and then in commercial aviation, it just adds to the stress. You know, we don't like to fly with a whole lot of extra gas. So when you start getting into a hold, and if you've ever been to a hold at a major airport, I'm sure you guys have before. You know, my most recent one was in Miami. There was a lot of aircraft stacked up waiting to get into Miami. And all of a sudden the radio starts, hey, we only got about 5 minutes left. How long is it going to be till Miami opens up? Because otherwise we got to divert to somewhere else. So that starts adding in a lot of stress, more congested airspace. So yeah, it's a lot of weather's huge.
Yeah, I think that's when you make your money as a pilot, commercial or
Yep.
otherwise. You know, that's why an instrument check is something we do regularly. You know, it's something we practice. We have to stay current on instruments. You know, I did when I was doing helicopter training and the Heli Expo and HAI, you know, they talk about the land and live, and you know, because it kills a bunch of helicopter pilots. You know, weather is the inadvertent in the IMC, instrument meteorological conditions. I'm sure, you know, less so in the military, Casmo, but it's still, you know, it's not something you guys are practicing a lot of in general, right?
I mean, it wasn't until I flew Echo model Apaches that I flew something that was like, it was not an emergency to go IMC. In a 58, if you went IMC, like it was brown trousers time, like, because you were not rated to do that. And then it wasn't until the Echo model that we had, you know, the ability to do an ILS. So yeah, that was huge for us.
That's a shirt.
Yeah,
You need, if you don't have it's brown trousers time on your new channel as a shirt, I don't know you.
New merch available now. Yeah, it goes back to that old saying, right? Like, it's better to be on the ground wishing you were in the air than be in the air wishing you're on the ground. And weather makes you think that sometimes.
Perfect. That's our segue for today's Mental Health Minute. Thank you, Casmo, for kicking that off.
We didn't even practice.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Great. So I was actually sent this as a suggestion. We had another topic, which we'll get to later, but as pilots, we tend to be mission oriented, and we tend to want to be leaning forward as much as we can. And not just as pilots, and just in life. You know, it's very easy to just go along to get along, and maybe not have boundaries and limitations, and just let people push us into situations that we're not comfortable with. And one of the things you learn as you fly, and one of the things I learned as a pilot, is knowing when to say no. And not just knowing when to say no, but knowing how to say no. I'll give an example. Shortly after, I lost a very good friend in the B course, the F-16 basic course, due to G-induced loss of consciousness. And in the aftermath of that, I was having trouble sleeping. And one night I was, you know, about to go do a BFM flight. And during pilot training, I didn't sleep at all. I mean, every night I was staying up and thinking about the flight of the next day, which was fine. I mean, not very healthy, but fine in a T6 or T38. But once you got to the F-16, it's big boy world. You're pulling 9Gs. I just lost a friend. So didn't sleep that night, came in, said, hey, boss, I'm taking myself off the schedule. And as a lieutenant, that's just something at the time you didn't think to do, because you were scared of the consequences. You didn't want to, you know, thrash the schedule because they'd already floated out of when you were doing your rides. And I'll never forget, you know, we had a pilot meeting shortly thereafter, and the group commander's like, hey, you know, what he did was smart, and you have to know when to say when. And that stuck with me through my career. And there's times where I wish I had said no, like Casmo just talked about. It's better be on the ground wishing you were up there than the other way around. And I've talked about it with, you know, some of the anxiety stuff that I had, where I had other stuff on my mind. I went flying and I wished I hadn't, because I spent a year trying to get myself out of that mindset, the anxiety that followed, or the apprehension. But knowing when to say, hey, this is a bad situation, we couldn't go flying. For example, the thing where I was thinking about the dogs, yes, that was an external factor I was thinking about, but the weather was a factor. We shouldn't have gone flying for the weather, and we actually ended up not doing anything worthwhile. And we become people pleasers, right? We want to say, hey, I'm go, 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 go. I'm always the guy, I don't want to get a reputation. But at the end of the day, it's your pink body in that seat. And sometimes you're responsible for other people. And someone has to be the person that goes, you know what? I'm going to wait and we're not going to fly today. And unless it's like, no kidding, troops on the ground are dying in combat, that's okay. Because there's no reason to push it in training or in peacetime, or even as commercial airline pilots, because, there was an old CEO that used to say there is no mission. There's no mission here. There's nothing that says you have to go flying. We can reschedule this flight. So caveat, unless people are dying on the ground and you're going into combat, and that's the only thing, because that's one thing where I'll say, hey, you got to say yes no matter what. However, there's times where even that you might say no, because are you worth more to the fight if you're good to go or if you kill yourself getting there? But knowing when to say no, knowing how to say no, and sometimes, you could ask the question like, hey, is this a good idea? Should we consider these other factors before we keep going down this rabbit hole? And sometimes it's just a matter of, hey, I'm drawing this line. My personal comfort has been exceeded and I'm not comfortable doing this and going flying. And you'll look at a lot of mishaps where if somebody had spoken up and said, we shouldn't do this, or I shouldn't do this, they'd be alive today. So that's kind of the mental health. It applies, worldwide, but guys, what do you think about that?
Yeah, man. I mean, I was like you in pilot training. I was go, 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 go. And it never dawned on me to even, not executing the schedule, because that's a written order, until I got to my first fleet squadron. And our skipper at the time, great guy, he was going through a pretty nasty divorce, and in a all pilot meeting we had, he just said, hey guys, I'm going through a tough time right now. He said, don't be surprised if I take myself off the schedule. And he said, and if any of you are going through anything and you need to take yourself off the schedule, you take yourself off the schedule. Like literally, that was it, done, period, dot. And that was the first time it dawned on me, like, oh, we could do that, and I'm glad he said it, because I was new, right? When you're new, it's yes, sir, yes, sir, yes, sir, yes, sir, right? Because you're just trying to build your reputation as a producer, right? But as I got older and more experienced, and like all three of us have had you back, you're like, I should not have taken off, kind of thing, right? You get that,
like 5 minutes into the flight, as soon as you take off, you're like, I shouldn't have done
bad
this.
idea, right? And so it just takes a couple of those, and all of a sudden you're like, you know what, I'm not going. And like Mover, remember when we were flying T-38, like there was the minimums and then there was Gonky minimums, and I'm like, hey, no, I don't like that weather, I'm not going. And it's because why put yourself in a sticky situation where you don't have to, right?
Well, also, even when you're in the air, the number one word any aspiring pilot or pilot needs to know is unable. Because it's not just saying no to not go fly, but it's saying no to not put yourself in a position that you're not comfortable with. And that applies to ATC, because when you're new, right, you think, well, they're going to fly my jet, right? I'm going to get in trouble if I say enable. And it's like captain's authority, PIC authority, whatever you want to call it. It's you, not them. They are, in the control tower or wherever they're at RapCon, and they're just watching you. And sometimes they can be a big help, but sometimes they can put you in a bad situation. And it's not intentional. It's just they don't have they don't know what you know. The final decision authority is you. So don't ever be afraid to say unable. And then if it becomes a thing, it becomes a thing. But I'd rather say unable, because I knew that what they were doing was going to put me in a bad situation, than to go along with it, and then there's no recourse. I mean, you're putting both your certificate and your life on the line.
A wise man once said, man's got to know his limitations.
That's right.
There it is. There it is.
I love him.
But and it's not just ATC too. I mean, there's examples of wingmen that have walked into bad situations because they were afraid to speak up, or co-pilots that were walked into bad situations because they were afraid to speak up. And sometimes you have to go, hey, if we do this, it is not going to end well. And you start with a, hey, what are you sure? I had a flight lead that said, always ask a cool question. But sometimes that cool question, if you know that you're going to put yourself in a dangerous or different situation, dude, just say no. It's easier said than done, but it's something you have to be comfortable doing.
Yeah, and I know we have people watching from all over the world, and I will say this, saying no or having the confidence and the authority to say no is very much a Western thing, because there are countries out there where it's much harder to say no.
Yeah.
Which sucks, right? Because that's, then you're really forcing things. But, I don't know. The way I see it is like, I would rather have said no than be dead. Like at the end of the day, because I've read enough being a safety officer, and Mover, you've covered a lot. It's like you read through these things, you're like, this was such an easy fix. Like if
just take one, it's an error chain. It just takes one thing to break it.
One, dude. Yeah. And dude, and here's the thing. It's like, as an IP in the Hornet, there's been times when I'm like, you student, no. Like, I understand, like, you're, you want to go, but I'm telling you, like, you're not going, because that's, like I said, we've all been there.
Easier.
The new guy.
It's easier as the IP than the student. And I think that's the courage you need to find. And I think we're doing a good job in general of saying, like, because there is a line, right? There is a line between I'm saying no for safety and I'm saying no for comfort, and comfort is one thing. If it's past your comfort level, let's figure out why it's past your comfort level. Is it because of safety, or is it because, well, I'm just not used to this yet? Okay, well, if it's because I'm not used to it yet, we can press forward, because you want to be out of your comfort zone at some point. But if you're uncomfortable with something because it's unsafe, that's when we need to speak up. And it doesn't matter. There's no rank in the air. There's no rank in the debrief in Western cultures.
Oh man, it's like being at 204 once. I hadn't flown the Hornet in like 4 weeks. Come in, I forget who it was. They're like, hey man, you want to go drop some lives? I was like, I just want to put the wheels up and down, dude. Like, no lie. Do not give me anything live on that jet.
Yeah.
Sorry, Casmo.
Yeah, what were you going to say?
No, well, it's two things, because you guys said it. One, to your point, Mover, about ATC can get you in trouble, and so you need to be able to know. There was just a near miss on a runway, I think, with a Southwest plane and like a corporate jet. And it was because the guy at ATC was doing like multiple jobs. And I hear it all the time. Like, the dude giving me my clearance is also ground and then also tower, and he cleared one guy to line up and wait and cleared another guy to land. And then he got busy doing somebody's clearance. And the pilots were like, hey, are we still clear to land? Like, I'm pretty sure this guy's still out there. So being able to question that authority to some extent, you don't have to be a jerk about it, but yeah, just say, hey, are we still good with that? And then the second thing that Gonky kind of talked about, or really both of you, it's interesting because in the military, I think flying and our comfort level it's much more personal, because generally speaking, we're all in the same unit. We all kind of know each other. We all kind of at least pick up on, hey, Mover's got stuff going on. He's not where he normally is. And, it's easier to have that conversation. It's still hard, but it's easier to have that conversation. And when I went through recurrent recently with my commercial job, it was put out by the chief pilot, like, I don't want to hear about personal minimums, which was interesting, because in the military, we talk about personal minimums like, hey, yes, it's legal, but it's not prudent weather. And his point was, there's one standard, and that's the company's standard, right? If you're not comfortable with that, then yes, you need to say something, but you're not canceling a flight just because, well, I'm not comfortable with this weather. Hey, if the weather's legal, that's the standard for the company. So it makes it a little bit more interesting conversation. But yeah, at the end of the day, you've got to know what you can handle, and then you've got to sort of like build upon that. And like you said, when you can, push your minimums, and push your boundaries into what you're comfortable with, because one day you're going to have to do it, and you don't want it to be the first time. It's like, when I have to do it, so yeah, something to think about. And I think that's important, I guess, to just follow that up, like in training, like when you're out there doing like your Cessna stuff and you're trying to build up to that career, like go fly when it's, you know, kind of skosh. Like don't wait for it to just be perfectly blue to fly. Like fly when it's legal, but still a little bit iffy.
Maybe take a safety pilot.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, 100%. Take a safety pilot. You know, like go to that airport that's a little bit tougher than normal. Like don't just pick the most random place when it's clear blue 22, and then try to go do airline stuff because it's not going to be the same.
Well, and so this is the mental health minute. So not just from an aviation perspective, I think in general, being able to assign boundaries for yourself and for others and not trying to be that people pleaser in general will make you a much happier person. Because if you feel like, you know, you're always going to let somebody down if you say no, or you feel like, you know, that will weigh on you in the long run versus I've got my standards. You know, I'm a man of or woman of integrity. And if something makes me uncomfortable and it's, you know, the comfort, like you talked about, the reason I'm uncomfortable is because, you know, the hair standing up on the back of my neck, then it's time to do something about that. And that any profession you're in, you have to be able to say, uncle, hey, you know, I'm not doing this. And if that's, you have to be able to live with yourself at the end of the day for that decision that you made, but don't put yourself in a situation that's going to make you either lose your life, destroy something, hurt yourself, hurt others because you didn't say anything. Yeah. Gonky, you usually have something profound to say when I get to this point.
No, not today. I'm still stuck on that coronary thing.
Douglas,
Just kidding.
from the
hey,
yeah, dude, what you got, man?
We forgot the background thing, right?
No, we're not done yet.
We're not done yet. Sorry.
We're not done yet. Come on, Douglas. We're on mental health.
As usual, you guys really covered a lot of the ground I would have suggested. I want to kind of emphasize what you said at the end there, Mover, that especially in the context of relationships, real world relationships, if you say no to somebody and it keeps you from resenting what you said yes about or what you would have said yes about, you're better off. You know, if you say, yeah, I'll help you out with that, or yeah, I'll do that, or I'll be there, and then you're pissed off about it for weeks afterward, you'd have been better off for both of you saying no. And that's something that I've struggled with over the years a lot.
Yeah, you don't want to resent people. You know, what is it? No regrets.
Yeah,
you know,
no regrets.
Don't have regrets for not having a thing.
And I'd rather somebody said no to me under those conditions too.
Yeah, I mean, you'll gain more respect as somebody with boundaries than if somebody let people walk all over you. Yeah, I mean, that's just 100%. A universal truth. So, all right, cool. Moving on, Douglas. I think we have some more
got some
chats before we get to the Love Me Walls and Casmo.
Brian was relating to the lack of haptic input, and he probably every DCS flyer would love to have this experience trying it in a real plane and finding out just how good you are.
I played DCS and flight sim a few years ago. I got to do a discovery flight in a 172. The instructor let me taxi and take off with his occasional corrections, but I totally understand the difference. Yeah, I think it's easier in real life, personally.
I can say that about race cars. It's way easier in real life.
Feels such a big deal.
Yeah.
John Ross would like for you to go to jail.
Yeah, right to jail, right away.
If you can see it, you're tracking it.
That, Amy.
If you can see it, you're tracking it.
Iran is a very honest and forthright country that would never say anything untruthful ever. And therefore, of course, they're saying the things that are true.
In all seriousness,
Sarcasmo.
Seriousness. Was Iceman in the right to speak up having Mav on alert status?
Oh, 100%.
Iceman did nothing wrong. Ever.
Well,
that's true. Ever.
Yeah.
Was he?
Come off high right.
About Maverick. Is he really the best?
Yeah. That's a realistic conversation. I mean, we used to have the what was it, the safety meetings where it was the gossip session. You had to talk about everybody in the squadron. That's when Gonky and I weren't allowed to fly with each other at the end of our 204 time.
That's true.
Because they thought we would conspire because we were both going back to the Air Force, or I was going back.
My first time.
Yeah, Gonky's first time First time.
Be gentle.
Jordan says he's a senior supervisor in a call center, and saying no took a while to figure out. And I can imagine that in supervisory positions. Almost lost my family from not being able to say
Yeah,
it.
100%, man.
Yeah. What are you going to get more time with, work or your family?
Right.
And that's it. I mean, saying no to, hey, you know, it's not an emergency. The place is not going to burn down without me. I'm going to enjoy my time off.
I had a coworker tell me that one time. He said, Doug, nobody is going to die if you screw up. It was good advice.
Yeah.
What happens to a newer pilot who decides it isn't for them and can't handle it anymore? Do they have options?
You always have options. Of course you have options. So if you're talking within the context of undergraduate pilot training, you still have a commitment. It's not 10 years, obviously, but I think it's 4 years. Don't quote me on that. 2 or 4
I think
years.
it depends. It depends. If you did like the academy, it's like 4 years. I think we did OCS.
Yeah, it depends on your commissioning source. So you're still going to have a commitment. I mean, Gonky, you've actually, I mean, you were helping people in the pipeline there, because that is a thing that happens where they have to still find a place to go, and you just find them another job, find something that's suitable, and then, you know, the old saying, grow where you're planted. Do what the best you can with the time you have left. But I think that is a very common thing where, you know, either somebody washes out or they just self-eliminate, and then sometimes they become CEOs of major airlines.
That's true. That's a true.
Moving on. One of Gonky's favorite viewers, Cluterus, checks in. Mover, if you had to fight Gonky in MMA or boxing, do you think you would win, and what round?
Oh boy.
I think I'd win because I'm going to cheat. 100%.
That's literally all Krav Maga is. No, Krav Maga is literally just a fighting style about cheating to win. It's contact combat. That's all we do. You know, I like Gonky too much to fight him. So I think it would go a
mutual tap out. Mutual tap out.
I think it would go till one of us got bored.
Yeah. That's fair.
I mean, tickle fight, slap fight.
We're not in the Navy anymore, Casmo.
Yeah.
It's not month 4 or 5 on deployment.
Despite our best efforts, it's not the Navy. Is that it, Douglas?
Yeah,
it is. All right.
We are in fact caught
up. Brought to you by Casmo. I love me walls. This was asked. I think it was asked in this very episode, wasn't it? It's been so long we've been talking.
There was a super chat.
I have a gift.
Casmo, tell us about your. Do I have to bring the pictures up?
You don't have to. I just thought it was interesting because we all have like our stuff. Yeah, that's my
for sexual activities.
Right. Did I send you that picture? Whoops.
Oops. Wrong file. Yeah, wrong file.
Red light, yellow light, green light.
I got that.
Remember saying no.
Leaving. Yeah, exactly. Well, I wanted to bring it up. Yeah. No, that was actually a going away gift I got from my boss when I was leaving the support battalion as the XO, because we had gone through, I'll spare you the long detail, but basically we got attacked by this other unit with CS gas. They came in and started throwing CS gas, and I was so pissed about the thing even happening that I literally like chased these dudes off. Like I was chasing them in their Humvees and like yelling at them and screaming, and it was all these privates who thought they were going out to just gas us and have fun, and then they just see this crazy major chasing them down, so they all raced off. So yeah, so that was my going away gift for that. It was a much longer story, but yeah. But the funny thing is that's like an authentic Russian gas mask, but it's got like asbestos in the filter, so you can't wear it.
1-800-MISO. Is that an Airwolf helmet above your noggin there?
No, that was my helmet. Like that's what I flew with.
How badass is that? It looks like Airwolf.
It's got the mandible shield. Yeah, we started getting those at the end because like shrapnel and crap like that. So we'd all you see a lot of the crew chiefs wear that stuff. I didn't really wear it that much, but it looks cool. The funny thing about that though is like flying 58s, because we didn't have doors on most times. So you'd be flying out and you'd be flying really low, so you'd be looking at people on the ground, and so they would come up with these weird names for us. And one of them I always loved. There was these Afghan villagers. They called us the soulless ones because they just saw dudes hanging out the side with that like this Darth Vader looking thing. And they just that's what they called us, the soulless ones. So I thought that was pretty cool. But yeah, that was
army
my helmet.
Army of gingers.
Yeah.
All right.
I think somebody was asking about my bat to like my keep mover good bat.
On
this
here?
is actually
no, that's not that.
Oh yeah, I think it is. But this was
sword.
just a wooden, like, so gladiators, you know, like in the movie Gladiator, talk about they give you a wooden sword when you get free.
Yeah.
So this is when I was an observer at the Joint Readiness Training Center, which is basically in the middle of nowhere, Louisiana, in the swamp. So
Fort
the
Puke
aviation unit. Yeah. So whenever we got released, this was our wooden sword, so we could be released from our duty.
Did you retire as a major?
I did. Yeah. I did time as
a bunch of no-load majors over here.
Right.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Can't hack it.
Yeah. Clearly.
And then this thing, certificate of authenticity.
That's cool.
So yeah, so the funny story, so that's my Purple Heart, obviously. The funny story here is that team photo, we had been putting that off for weeks and weeks and weeks. We took it the morning I got shot.
Are you the giant on the far right?
I am the giant.
Wow.
Dude, do the rotor blades hit you in the head?
I
Is that a risk for you?
Yeah. I don't mess around with the rotors. And then that flag, it's not folded very well, but there's a reason, because it's got a bullet hole in it. So we used to fly around with flags in boxes, like you could buy them at the PX or whatever. And so people would come by and like, hey, could you fly this flag? And, we'd have this little certificate like, oh, this flag flew over Missoula or whatever. And so the guy I was flying with, who's going to be on my show tomorrow, he had like a bunch of boxes of them sitting behind me. And so after everything was said and done, I was home on convalescent. And then I get a package in the mail. He sent me one and it had a bullet hole through it. So when I pulled it out, like shrapnel fell out and everything. But yeah, there's like a hole right over here on the flap. So anyway, it was just kind of weird. So my wife put all that together. Anyway.
Cool.
But I'm interested to hear like what you guys, I mean, that's the one thing about the military is you always get like this stuff, just tons of wall art.
How many bullet holes are in your flag there, Mover?
No, you want him to put one in now? We get demonetized.
No, don't do it. Yellow light.
We'll do it live on YouTube. Mover puts a hole in his wall. Gonky, tell me about the crooked pictures and your helmets, and was that a treadmill? And then that ghost that always pops up behind you.
Yeah.
Yeah, those are birthday cards. Nothing nearly as cool as Casmo, but I've got my helmets right up here. Let's see. Whoops, that one's my Boeing helmet, and then the other two are my Navy helmets. The one helmet I wanted, and I was too dumb, but my first one from UPT Advance, I gave it back to him like an idiot. I wish I still had that helmet, but I know. But then every command you go to in the Navy, when you leave, even the Air Force, although I didn't get our T-38 one, they give you a nice plaque with everybody.
Tank to the courtesy phone. Tank to the courtesy phone. Please send us our litho.
Yeah, that's true. Anyways, your friends sign it, kind of like your high school yearbook or whatever, and then that's pretty much it. A couple other little pictures like from the air show here with Corsair, and I've got a really nice one right here from my time in Malaysia from the guys. I really like that one, but yeah, pretty vanilla compared to Casmo. No bullet holes in mine.
No, I can't compete with that.
No.
I got let's see, the Altitude Airspeeder Brains I got on a mover mailbag. And then the Lemoyne 69 I got on a mover mailbag. And then this right here is the poster you get when you buy 01. So I've got that. Let's see. That picture right there is a black and white photo that I took. So GoPro took it coming back. VFA 204 used to do the city tour. And I love it because you can see the Superdome over my shoulder because that was my city. And then Finney Flight, one of the books I've written from the Spectre series, which you can't talk about books. My other car is a plane. Got that. Yeah. Not DOD approved. My other car is a plane. Also from the mover mailbag, 100,000 subscribers, which Gonky and Casmo will both have soon. Navy New Orleans, also from the mover mailbag. All this is from the mover mailbag. And then a picture of my puppies, obviously rest in peace for two of them, which is a good segue because Luna and I are starting therapy dog training Wednesday. and it's a pilot program. Thank you to the National Police Association for sponsoring her training. But we are going to get her certified as a therapy dog and hopefully turn the tragedy of losing the boys into something cool. And I'm excited about that because, and this is a Thrustmaster TSXW. They sent me this. Very nice of them. I'd love the direct drive wheel if you've got it. And then the shifter that I bought. It's not a sex toy like the gas mask. It's actually a shifter. And that is all for that. Casmo, speaking of sex toys, tell me about your new show.
Well, it's on OnlyFans, and no, yeah. So I've been doing a podcast for a really long time, about 3 years, but I kind of paused for a little bit, was thinking about things. I'm actually kind of inspired by the way that you're doing this one. So, and I had been thinking for a while of doing some sort of live component to it. So we're going to start the podcast back up, do it live over on my channel. But we're going to start tomorrow night, 8 p.m. Eastern. Actually, so I'm the tallest guy, but the smallest guy in the picture is going to be there. He was actually my commander when I was a warrant officer. He was with me. He was in the cockpit with me when I got shot. So we'll talk about that. Just kind of like, because he and I have never really talked about it, like, just kind of in passing, but we never had like a real conversation. So I was kind of interested to go back, because it's been almost 20 years, but to like, what do you remember from that day and kind of leading up to it and stuff like that. So we'll talk about that. And then, he commanded at the squadron level with Apaches. He flew 58s. He was in the invasion in Iraq. So he's got a lot of experience. So yeah, and he's a goofball. So it'll be a good time, I think. But that's what we're going to do.
Hell yeah. That'll be fun. Awesome. Well, thank you for being on the show today.
Yeah.
I've
Good to have you, Casmo.
Speaking of helicopters, man, tomorrow is my Finney flight.
Sad. Very sad.
In the helicopter. Because they're selling it. So the helicopter has sold. The only one within like a 200-mile radius of New Orleans is sold. Really? So tomorrow morning, Lester and I are going to take her for one last ride, and then it's going to go off to another state. It's not even local. It's going to go off to another state, and then Six Sierra Hotel will no longer be a part of this channel. And I don't know. There's no follow-on. Like, I don't know what's next. I guess I'm not going to fly anything after that, because there's no place to fly. The sheriff's office doesn't have a helicopter anymore. I don't have a helicopter to fly. It's going to be sad.
Yeah. You're going to have to start a GoFundMe.
However, me and Luna will be doing therapy dog training, so we'll be happy. Yay.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So anyway, Douglas, we got anything from the kids at home before? Or we do? Look, I found it. James says, Mover, I enjoy your content. It's awesome. You're in Louisiana too. Did you figure out more about those masks in the latest movie review? So he's referring to Called to Duty, which is a movie that I did a Mover Ruins movies on.
It's terrible.
Casmo, are you familiar with that movie?
Don't even wait.
No,
the premise.
The first time I saw is when your thing popped up. I haven't watched it yet, but
my thing did not pop up, so to speak.
Don't waste your time.
So Called to Duty is an independent film about an all-female demo team that does demos from the ship. So they take off and land on the carrier, and they go do their demos, and they come back on the ship. And there is an imminent threat in North Keong. I said that correctly. And North Keong is advancing their ballistic missile program to the point that it's time to take them out. So the Air Force Last Resort program colonel says, my boys flying the Eagles need these girls flying the Hornet to go into enemy territory and serve as a distraction while the Eagles destroy the ballistic missiles. So it's a movie about empowerment, and I don't know anything else, to be honest with you. They go to bad
acting.
They go to so they pick these girls, and they're like, hey, you guys are going to do this, and they're like, okay, cool. And then they fail at every test that they're given. And then they're like, okay, well, the red phone has said that, we need to do this in 24 hours. So then they tell them what it was all about because they never knew what they were training for, which is always good when you're going into a mission to not know exactly why. And the girl finds out that the mission is to go to combat. And she's like, whoa, I did not sign up for this. I'm a Christian. I don't do war. So God, we're probably not going to do this.
Has she read the Bible at all?
Right. Let me introduce you to everything about Christianity.
They take her back.
Saying that.
Right. Me too.
Yeah. So they talk to her and she's like, okay, but promise me we're just the distraction and we don't have to kill anything. And it's going to be the boys doing all the killing. And it's like a Team America moment. Like, I promise I will never die. And so they go in, and of course, they're talking on the radio about how, things are happening. We're going on the strike, which is always good when you're talking on open frequencies to let the enemy know what you're doing. So they get into bad guy land, and it's all quiet. The IADS is down or whatever. Well, then they start getting popped off by SAMs. And so they start threat reacting, and then obviously all the girls get shot down because they didn't know how to train for combat or anything. So why would they? And so there's this moment where the main character's flying out and the enemy flankers show up, and the enemy flankers talk trash over, guard, I guess, in some language that actually is just English that they took backwards. They flipped it around, and she goes, "What did they say?" And the guy who came and was on her wing to talk her down to get her back in the fight says, "He just said that women can't be pilots." And she's like,
Oh,
and
boy.
so she turns around and shoots him down. And then we learn that all the wing girls were shot down. But then there's a big reveal at the end. Spoiler alert. The captain or the lieutenant colonel says that we think they're POWs, all of them. I'm like, well, how do you know? It's like, well, we had some secret back channels between Washington and North Keong, and they talked about some new POWs that they had. And like, well, how do you know that was them? It's like, because they've said the camp has never smelled so good.
Oh.
And then she says, "My girls." And then she says, "I'm going to go get them." And then that's going to be the sequel.
Oh, good.
Yeah. So Arnold's son is in this movie.
Estranged, right? Like the one with the housekeeper, not
the built one or the. Oh, okay. All right.
Yeah. So I mean, I was like, oh, maybe no. I was like, no, it's not.
Well, it's still a better love story than Twilight. So were they pilots already, or they just grabbed these girls and said, "You're going to be pilots"? Like an Armageddon situation where we can't trust the astronauts to drill. We've got to get drillers and make them astronauts.
They're a demo team. They're the Blue Angels, and the cook is their squadron commander. Like the ship's cook is their squadron commander, but she gets wings at some point midway through their story. Yeah, she just gets wings of gold, which, by the way, they're all wearing Air Force wings. So I'm not real sure how they got those, but
it's one of your squadron jobs. You got to eat.
Right, it's an additional duty. Like,
it's a commentary. It's a commentary on the level of retention because no pilot did their professional military education, just the cook. So the cook is now the commander of the whole ship. Thank you, Gonky. Janitor's back says, my 14-year-old pup gives paws up for Luna. Thank you for that.
Nice.
And then oh boy. Cluterus says, would either of you guys consider doing a live meetup at an air show or something similar for your fans? Yeah.
Yeah.
As long as it's not far. Yeah.
Yeah.
Sure. I haven't been in an air show in a really long time.
Yeah, me either.
Yeah, I don't do that, but we'll figure something out. Maybe eventually. I was hoping we'd do race cars and go to races, but that didn't work out. If you want to sponsor a race car, hit me up. Yeah. Well, Casmo, it's been real. This is a long episode, so to speak, but it's always a pleasure to have you on our channel. Please come back.
Man. Anytime.
Whenever you want.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I'll come back anytime you want me to. I have good times here.
Sweet. Gonky?
No parting shots, man. We covered a lot. It's good.
You sure did. Douglas?
Good here.
Do we get all the questions?
I think we did.
Cool.
Awesome. Well, I appreciate you guys watching. Hope you guys have a good week. Might take me a little while to get the clips done because of the Finney flight tomorrow, but Thanks for watching anyway.
Yeah,
I'll see you
thanks.
next Monday. Same
See you
time,
guys
same
next
place.
week.
See you.